What is going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? In these days, we find ourselves too often stuck with questions on repeat. What's going to happen? Will everything be okay? What can I do? We grasp at signs and markers and articles of news and analysis. But for this hour, we gather to surrender to the mystery, to release ourselves from the needing to know, the yearning to have it all figured out, and also the burden of believing that we either have all the control or none. Here in our song and our silence, in our stories and our sharing, we make space for new breath, new healing, new possibility to take root. That is courage forged in the fire of our coming together and felt in the spirit that comes alive in this act of faith, that we believe still a new world is possible and that we are creating it already, here and now. Good morning. My name is Pam Romancic. I'm a white, cisgendered, queer woman whose pronouns are she and hers. I serve this vibrant church, and I'm also someone who loves the wild turkeys around my house. Even though if we wash the car, they will attack themselves in the reflection for hours. Any day we see a turkey is a good day, and today we saw a whole flock of them crossing the road on the way in. Whoever you are, whoever you love, whatever you care about, you are welcome here.
The chalice lighting this morning is called Hoping, Trusting for So Many Things by Katie Canderin Morris. Here we have come into this sacred space, quieter now with our readiness, hushed voices, hoping, trusting so many things, for connection, for communion, for inspiration, for information, for healing, for wholeness, for words, for music, for celebration and consolation. Here we have come into this space, bringing all of who we are. Let us be willing, however we are changed. Hello, my name is Ellen Vinzani, and my pronouns are she, her. Our church shares a covenant that we make with one another, a promise that helps to remind us of why we gather and how we want to be with one another. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in saying our covenant together and remain standing for our opening hymn. We unite to strengthen the bonds of kinship among all persons, to promote human dignity, and to increase reverence for life's creating, sustaining, and transforming power through worship, study, and service. The opening hymn is number 396, I Know This Rose Will Open.
We are still in the pledge drive, and so I'm going to invite Gary Lebedz up here to give us an update.
Good morning. I'm here this morning representing the stewardship team. And before I get going, I want to point out this wonderful lighthouse that Rick Rayborn made for the stewardship team. If you get a chance, thank him. It's amazing. I present this statement this morning with all due respect and my sincere apologies to Abraham Lincoln. 4 weeks and 7 days ago, our stewardship team brought forth on this congregation a new pledge campaign called Shine Our Light, and which was dedicated to the proposition that all households should generously increase their pledge. While we are still engaged in that campaign, we pause on this day to honor all those who have already submitted their pledges. It is altogether fitting and proper that we should do so. So far, 66 households have submitted increased pledges for a total of $276,109, with an average increase of 14.5%. That's pretty good. 32 households have kept their pledge the same for a total of $106,250. And then there were some households who needed to decrease their pledge, offset by new members who joined the congregation recently. Overall, we have received pledges from 116 households with total pledges of $398,614, a net increase of $33,430 over last year's. That's a 9.2% increase. Thank you very much to everyone who has already pledged. We are now trying to wrap up this campaign, but we still have 71 households that have not pledged. The stewardship team has dedicated itself to contacting each one of the unpledged by whatever means necessary, but generally by email, phone call, or text message. We will not rest until we have received a pledge from every unpledged household. You know who you are. So that this congregation of the people, by the people, and for the people shall thrive long into the future. Please get your pledge in as soon as possible. And one more aside, if you haven't already attended and haven't pledged and haven't attended a cottage meeting, Lisa Gilly and I will be in Atherton Hall after the service to give you an abbreviated cottage meeting. And now I invite Bob Anders up to give his...
I'm suspecting I should have gone first before Carrie, because I'm also on the stewardship committee. And I'm here to tell you why it is that I'm happy to be a UU and to be here. I started out life living here in Chicago as a secular Jew. Now, what a secular Jew is somebody who has a history of being Jewish, but when goes to synagogue, the rabbi says, "Don't I know you? Weren't you here last year?" And that's all true. And while I was living my life that way, my first marriage was to a very good Catholic woman. And I discovered that all that genuflecting and crossing was really not a part of who I was. And as that marriage came to its end, I had a blind date with a woman, Barbara, who was a UU. And the Italians call it struck by lightning. When I met her, I was struck by lightning and knew that I was going to love and marry her for the rest of my life. And we were together for 40 years. And it was a marvelous 40 years. But as happens, life is not always fair, and she got Alzheimer's. And I lost her in 2019. And that was a very difficult time for me. And Hillary was the minister here at that time. And I worked with her, and she helped me a lot in terms of dealing with what it means to be a widower and what it means to deal with the grief that goes with that. And she suggested that I stop being a hanger-on, which is what I was at the time, and that I should consider joining some of the groups that were here. And so I joined the discussion group and many of the others, and a men's group. And I found that that was really significant in my life. And I finally decided that I needed to be a UU and became a member, and have never been unhappy for that. So the question is, why am I telling you this? I'm telling you this because this church does not run for free, and it's not cheap. And that means that I would like you to fill out that pledge form if you haven't done so, and turn it in. And if you can be additionally generous to what you were last year, that would be wonderful. If you can't, you do what you can. Thank you for listening.
Thanks so much, Bob. We have such great people, and they say good stuff, don't they? We're going to now sing This Little Light of Mine to finish out this portion. Thanks so much. You guys did great on that round, too. I was impressed. I'm going to invite our young at heart to come up for our story for all ages, for our wondering time. And we're going to start wondering. What do we... Hello, how are you today? Good. We're going to wonder. Let's just take a few minutes and think about what could be in the box today. We're wondering first. First, we're putting our wondering. Okay, we have some people who have wondered enough. Okay, what did you think? M&Ms. That could be. Nora? A plant. That's a good question, William. A violin. Okay, those are all good. Oh, a violet. Sorry. A violet is a very good answer as well. Any other? Yes. A ship. That's a good. Yes. A shamrock. Ooh. A squirrel. Yes. A bulldozer. Possible. Yes. A whole bag of lichen. Okay, lichen. All right, yes. A box of food. Okay, those are many, many great guesses. Okay, one more guess. Go ahead, Xander. No, that was a couple services ago. It was a bottle of farts. Who hasn't opened our Wonder Box yet that would like to? Have you? You haven't done it? Okay, come on. What is your name? Do you know what that is? Huh? It's a ball, or it's a very big seed. A seed. Well, I think it's a seed. Are we agreed it's a seed? Okay, we're agreed it's a seed. Thank you, guys.
It's actually a special kind of seed that sometimes people make here. It's a seed that's covered by compost so that when you toss it, it will easily grow, right? I think, William, you may have made it, and Lumen definitely did as well. And Otto and Walter, you will probably next year. I know I'm not going to drop it. I'm going to put it right back in the box. Yeah, Yeah, if we might take that at some point and throw it back over there into the field where there are all those wonderful native plants. But today, before we do that, I have a story for you all. It's a story that comes from China, and there was this emperor who loved flowers. Anybody here like flowers? I love flowers. They're almost coming. It's very close. It's not quite yet. Spring is coming. It is. Oh my gosh. This emperor loved flowers. And one day while he was tending his pots, he bent over, and I'm sure this has never happened to anybody here except me. He bent over and went, "Oh, ow, oh, gosh, I am getting old." Yes, hold on just a second. So he was bending over and he realized that he needed to find somebody who was going to take his place as emperor at some point, but he had no kids. That's so sad, isn't it? He had no children. So he went out and sent something out to all of China and said, "Everybody who's a kid or kid at heart, come to my palace, and I have a huge announcement for you." So they all came, and they all sat very quietly and listened as the emperor said, "I am going to give each one of you a seed. And I want you to go and plant this seed and bring it back in a year, and that will help me to determine who is going to be emperor." Can you imagine? Have you ever planted seeds?
I tried it before, and I keep watering it, but it didn't grow.
Oh, well, that's a prelude. Anybody else here ever planted seeds? Yeah, it's kind of fun to watch seeds grow, right? So one of the people that got the seed, name was Ping. And Ping had what some people call a green thumb. Does anybody know what a green thumb means? What does a green thumb mean, Xander?
A green thumb is just like a tiny part of a plant poking up.
Sometimes that's what people call a green thumb. Walter, what do you think a green thumb is? When you're really good at growing things. Sometimes people say you have a green thumb. Well, Ping had a green thumb. He could grow anything. Anything that he put into the soil, somehow it would grow. So he took a pot, and he took the seed, and he put it into the pot. Way down deep, so it was all covered with soil. It was great. And he watered it, and he put it in the best light he could think of, and he watched it, and he walked away, and he went back and he looked again, and he walked away, and then he went back and looked again, and nothing was growing. Kind of like what happens with you, Nora, sometimes. And sometimes that happens with me too, I have to be honest. So he did the very best, and he heard all these other kids all over China did the same thing, and they were getting these beautiful, huge, flowing plants, kind of like, might have even looked like some of these that our friend Peggy takes care of. So all these other people had these beautiful plants and beautiful flowers and so much green, and he was like, "Come on, grow!" So he moved it to be warmer, and he moved it to be lighter and better situated, because anything by the choir is always good. And he moved it to have more light. Nothing would water, right? Nothing would work. And a year came up, and the emperor said, "Okay, everybody bring back your plants." And there was Ping with his pot, and he walked up, and everybody else had these huge plants, and they were pointing and laughing at him because his was only a pot with a seed in it someplace. He came up and we're supposed to present what they had grown, and the Ping's father said, "It's okay, you've done your best. It's really, you need to just do what has been asked of you." So he comes forward, and with his empty pot when it's his turn, and he goes and he presents it to the emperor. He puts it in front of the emperor. I guess I should put it in front of Pam because she's kind of the emperor here at church, or maybe in front of Lisa. I don't know. It's so confusing in Unitarian churches. So we'll just put it here. So she put it, and the emperor said, "Why is your pot empty when everybody else's has these huge flowers in it?" And Ping said, "I did everything. I watered it, I put it by the choir, I gave it to Lisa, I put light in it, all these things, and nothing worked." And the emperor said, "That is it, I have made my decision. Ping will be the next emperor." And the crowd said, "Did you see the pot? It didn't do so well over here." And they all laughed and sort of giggled. He said, "I am choosing Ping because Ping is honest." And they said, what does that mean?" And the emperor said, "All of the seeds that I gave you were boiled. The seeds would not grow ever, no matter what you did with them. Ping is the only one who was honest enough and trustworthy enough to bring an empty pot, even when he knew that it might look kind of silly." So Ping went on to become a great emperor. Do you know why? Why do you think? Because his pot was just empty. And he was honest. Yeah, he didn't lie. And also he had the courage to show up and bring an empty pot, even when he wasn't sure if that was what was going to be the best thing. And all the other people brought different pots, yeah. So now we're going to go and we're going to learn a little bit more about trust today together. Yeah, Finley?
Well, I was going to hear the other thing that I wanted to share. Like, it's kind of about flowers and stuff.
Flowers are good, aren't they?
Yesterday, I found like two pieces of lichen.
Oh, 2 pieces of lichen. So spring actually is coming. So I'm going to ask you to bring that story with me back to the classrooms, and we'll sing the children out.
This is the time in our service when we're asked to think about what Countryside Church and Unitarian Universalism means to us and how we can sustain and nurture this living tradition. And as we consider that, please think about the words from Reverend William G. Sinkford, former president of the UUA. He reminds us, quote, "Our financial choices are moral choices. How we spend, save, and share reflects who we are and what we value. In a world of inequality, stewardship becomes an act of justice." Your gift will now be gratefully received, and if this is your first time here, please let the plate pass you by, for your presence today is your first gift to us.
Sometimes I've thought about moving the collection to the end of the service, but I've come to realize that we always get to enjoy Janice's beautiful music, and it opens our hearts wide open to go into our meditation. So why move it? Some massive, invisible hand kept capturing me, then tossing me into the air. I'd somersault and fall and be caught, then placed upright again on the ground. All night it went on like this. I'd be walking, and then I'd be flying, and then I'd be falling, and then I'd be caught until finally by morning we couldn't say that it wasn't disconcerting. But we could say I had become more fluent in this strange upheaval. We could say I had begun to trust the same hand that tossed me would catch me. We could say that when I woke up, I was still myself, and nothing felt the same. Although my feet never left the ground today, I was tossed, and then I was caught. And even now, I almost feel them around my chest, those great fingers, as they set me on my feet again. Sometimes I've thought about moving the collection to the end of the service, but I've come to realize that we always get to enjoy Janice's beautiful music, and it opens our hearts wide open to go into our meditation. So why move it? Some massive, invisible hand kept capturing me, then tossing me into the air. I'd somersault and fall and be caught, then placed upright again on the ground. All night it went on like this. I'd be walking, and then I'd be flying, and then I'd be falling, and then I'd be caught until finally by morning we couldn't say that it wasn't disconcerting. But we could say I had become more fluent in this strange upheaval. We could say I had begun to trust the same hand that tossed me would catch me. We could say that when I woke up, I was still myself, and nothing felt the same. Although my feet never left the ground today, I was tossed, and then I was caught. And even now, I almost feel them around my chest, those great fingers, as they set me on my feet again. Today, as a congregation, we remember those joys and concerns that have come forward. There's a few. Kim Frank shares that Sarah and Jason's granddad, Larry Tilford, passed away. She writes that it's sad for all of us, but especially for Jason. Jason was their first grandchild, and they were very close. Larry had been battling Parkinson's for several years, so it was a blessing for him to be released. We're also very lucky to have had him so that he was able to meet River this summer. We offer love and care to their family during this time. Also, big hearts to the Schnitzler's family, who had a virus run through their beloved pet rats and caused them to lose a few of their tiny friends. It's really hard to say goodbye to our pets, and we hold that family in our hearts as they adjust this week. Carrie Liebling shared that her cousin's husband, George Ellis, entered hospice after 2 years of treatment for leukemia. George and Kathy's cousin Vicki married when they were 22 and 19, nearly 40 years ago. We offer our love to the family during this difficult time. We do have two joys. Keegan Rule's wrestling team is doing well. Yay, Keegan. And you may have noticed the prescribed burn that was done on the acre of prairie just outside. It's part of a long-term prairie restoration program. The organizer of this project, Mike Colwas, was there all day Monday outside in the kind of damp, rainy weather. And he was supposed to share details with you today about what happened, but he got a really bad cold. So he is going to give a full update in the weeks to come, but we just wanted to mention it today. We also remember our Chalice House family. Laura Mendel writes that their ability to stay in the country may be revoked by the new administration in the coming weeks. They do have legal representation and good advisors, but hold them and the 240,000 other Ukrainians who are here due to Russia's attack on their country, we hold them all in our hearts. And finally, we did have the wrong date with Richard Urban's surgery. It was just this past Friday. His sister said it went well and he is home. We continue to send him our love and care. For all other intentions which remain in the silent sanctuary of your heart today, know that you are held, you are loved. Please remain seated as we sing Spirit of Life.
The first reading this morning is from On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder. We tend to assume that institutions will automatically maintain themselves against even the most direct attacks. This was the very mistake that some German Jews made about Hitler and the Nazis after they had formed a government. On February 2nd, 1933, for example, a leading newspaper for German Jews published an editorial expressing this mislaid trust. It said, "We do not subscribe to the view that Mr. Hitler and his friends, now finally in possession of the power they have so long desired, will implement the proposals circulating in Nazi newspapers. They will not suddenly deprive German Jews of their constitutional rights, nor enclose them in ghettos, nor subject them to the jealous and murderous impulses of the mob. They cannot do this because a number of crucial factors hold powers in check. And they clearly do not want to go down that road. When one acts as a European power, the whole atmosphere tends towards ethical reflection upon one's better self and away from revisiting one's earlier oppositional posture. Such was the view of many reasonable people in 1933, just as it is the view of many reasonable people now. The mistake is to assume that rulers who came to power through institutions cannot change or destroy those very institutions, even when that is exactly what they have announced that they will do. It took less than a year for the new Nazi order to consolidate. By the end of 1933, Germany had become a one-party state in which all major institutions had been humbled. Thus ends the reading. Now we'll have a responsive reading by Desmond Tutu, and it's number 593 if you're following your hymnal. Liberation is costly. And I will start and you will respond. It will be up on the screen right there. Liberation is costly. Even after the Lord had delivered the Israelites from Egypt, they had to travel through the desert. There was starvation and thirst, and they kept complaining. Many of them preferred the days of bondage and the flesh pots of Egypt. We must hold hands and refuse to be divided. We must be ready. But those people will have contributed to the struggle. The second reading is by Brian Doyle, and it's entitled, quote, "All you can do is face the world with quiet grace and hope you make a sliver of difference. Humility does not mean self-abnegation, lassitude, detachment. It's more a calm recognition that you must trust in that which does not make sense, that which is unreasonable, illogical, silly, ridiculous, crazy by the measure of most of our culture. You must trust that you being the best possible you matters somehow, that trying to be an honest and tender parent will echo for centuries through your tribe, that doing your chosen work with creativity and diligence will shiver people far beyond your ken, that being an attentive and generous friend and citizen will prevent a thread or two of the social fabric from unraveling. And you must do all of this with the certain knowledge that you will never get proper credit for it. And in fact, the vast majority of things you do right will go utterly unremarked. That is what I know, that the small is huge, that the tiny is vast." Thus ends the reading.
Today's service is titled, "In God We Trust," or Goddess. It's a statement of faith, a belief that something beyond all human endeavors upon which you can depend no matter what. I added goddess to balance things out. Does anyone know when the phrase God, not goddess, was added in the U.S. currency, to U.S. currency? Any idea? Do you remember? In the 50s, 1957. That mythical year that many people invoke when we want to say they want to go back to simpler times. It was during Eisenhower's presidency. It's only 75 years ago, a time when we know who was firmly in charge of everything. And you probably know that under God was added to the 1892 Pledge of Allegiance in 1954, so that was a busy decade. Adding God, that old white man in the sky, gave weight and heft and made it seem a more trustworthy government. God was somebody that everybody believed in, except those godless communists, of course. Of course, this was not the whole truth, not even throughout the country, but that's what it looked like on TV, so that's what we thought was true. This month, we're looking at the idea of trust and what it means, where we place our trust, how we can earn it, and how it is lost. It's a big concept. Sometimes it's used interchangeably with faith, but they're not the same. Karen and I were talking about the other day, and I realized that I trust, but I'm not sure I have faith in faith. Trust is more passive. Trust comes from observable, repeatable patterns that I've noticed myself or which have passed the test of time. Faith sometimes involves some effort. Having faith means there might not be any supporting evidence to believe what's true. I'm glad the theme this month is trust. Writer Mark Nepo writes, "When I was walking along the shore of a lake in the middle of the day, The sun was out, and a good 10 yards out on the pond, a duck curled on itself asleep. With its tufted head tucked into its body, it bobbed peacefully in the lapping of the water. The little scene undid me, for here was an ultimate lesson in trust. Without any intent or knowledge of itself, this little duck, asleep in the womb of the world, was a deep and wordless teacher. Teaching what? Teaching trust? Might we all sleep in the womb of the world without even knowing it? I know I don't, as often as I might want to. I mean, sometimes I barely sleep in my incredibly safe bedroom at nights, but the danger's not from outside, it's from anticipating what might be happening in the days and weeks and months to come in our wider world. Most days it does not feel like a womb. We are in the middle of a crisis of trusts in our country. I mean, I trust my family. I trust members of this church. I trust my local newspaper, and mostly trust larger newspapers, but read them with a critical eye. I'm suspicious of many talking heads. And I'm in the company of many Americans when I say that I trust my elected officials, but I'm not so sure about everybody else's. And I grew up the daughter of an extremely honest politician, so I know they exist even now. There are good people out there trying to make the world a better place. But how do I know they haven't compromised on things to try to get some other greater good done? It's hard to know. I used to trust that most state and local officials were doing their best, and I still want to believe that. But in all of that eroding of my own trusts, I am falling into the very trap which is causing democracy to falter. Because trust, it's what democracy needs of its subjects in order to survive. We must believe in the government in order for it to continue to stand. Has anyone read a small book called On Tyranny by Timothy Smith? I figured there might be a few out there. More than a few. Snyder, sorry. Timothy Snyder, thank you. It says that. It's a fascinating book, and if anybody's interested, we might put together a book, just a short book club, reading club, something like that. But Snyder is a historian out of Yale who wrote the book before Trump was elected in 2016. His biography states that he teaches undergraduate and graduate level courses in modern Eastern European political history, graduate seminars on the Holocaust, on Eastern European history, on the dynamics of international crisis in European political history, and he's taught lecture surveys in Eastern Europe to 1914 and Eastern Europe since 1914, besides graduate seminars on the global history of the Holocaust and the contemporary history of diplomatic crisis. He might know a few things. He writes that history does not repeat, but it does instruct. He then goes on to say that our founding fathers took a great deal of instruction from history as they debated and wrestled and tried to create that more perfect union. The failures of the past guided them in trying to create a new country which could survive human nature. Our founding fathers didn't trust human nature. The second chapter of Snyder's book is called Defend Institutions. And he writes that people think institutions will save us, but they won't if we do not actively save the institutions themselves. In my life, I have not been an institutionalist. To me, they seemed stuffy, against progress. They were more like enormous ships that took a great deal of effort to move, and I wanted to live a more free-spirited existence. But as I've served churches, which are institutions, I've come to respect and appreciate the value they offer. Institutions are unwieldy and difficult to turn on a dime, and they hold on to things that are valuable and which are of importance to forward and ongoing generations. This church is an institution. It's not centuries old, but it definitely has its own character and a sense of history. It is here that uncounted children have grown up with a liberal and compassionate perspective on life. Uncounted people have been supported and received meals and care and have known themselves to matter and belong. Uncounted people have experienced the warmth of community and the satisfaction of a good potluck. Here, people have learned together, grown together, and leaned into hard truths to become fuller and more nuanced people together. Institutions promote goodness and hold values that stand even in the midst of chaos and difficult transitions. Institutions are important, but they do not exist by and of themselves, and they are only as strong as the people who make them up. Which is why Snyder warns us not to make the mistake the Jewish community in 1930s Germany made, not to believe that institutions can save us on their own. Snyder was warning us in 2016 when his book came out, and continues to warn us now. The longer we remain quiet in the face of unacceptable behaviors, the harder it is to pull back. Trust. Trust sometimes causes problems, doesn't it? When we trust everything's going to be all right despite all evidence to the contrary, we're actually going on faith there. When we trust that a democracy has lasted this long, so surely it can continue, or that people will not do the things they said they would do, it's not actually trust. It's avoidance, it's denial, it's an inability to understand that nothing lasts forever, and that everything has a beginning and a middle and an end. So where can we put our trust? Where do you put your trust? I'm going to invite you to just think for a moment. Is there anything or anyone that you absolutely trust? Not as in trust but verify, but that you trust wholeheartedly. And I'm going to invite you to take 2 or 3 people around you and just talk for a couple minutes. And I ring a bell to bring you back. So make sure everybody's connected, make sure nobody's left out of your conversations. Think for a minute and then turn to one another and talk, please. Sounds like there was some good conversations, and I'm really interested in what you came up with. So Ellen and Mike are going to go around. If you have something you want to share from your conversation, they'll bring you the microphone so you can share. So anybody willing to? Oh, good, yay.
Sure. Hi, I'm Diana Sparks. One thing we discussed was that in the 50s, those of us who grew up in the 50s, we have that deep knowledge, that feeling of trust. But when I think about my children and my children's children growing up without that deep sense of trust, where do they learn it? Where do they develop it? How do they look at the world so differently than we do? Like, I know my kids always tell me, well, your generation is the problem. And I can see that because we trusted things, and a lot of us still do. And that's creating a problem for our generations on down.
I trust math.
Anybody else willing to share? Thanks.
I trust gravity. Gravity is really reliable.
It is.
And if I have, I'm a therapist, if I have any clients who have trust issues, I say, let's start with gravity, okay? We can all trust gravity. And I think the issue of trust is something that brought me to Buddhism, because even the Buddha said, hey, don't trust me, trust your own inner wisdom, trust your own experience. And I do have trust with my family, my husband, but I think the deepest personal trust I've ever had has been with a couple of my Buddhist teachers that I've worked with intensively, and that is a trust that's beyond, it's a different category. Oh, and I also trusted Walter Cronkite.
We did.
Yes.
And anybody else have something they're willing to share? There you go.
Put your fingers in your ears, Reverend Pam. No, I wasn't anticipating sharing, but I did say that one of the things that happened last summer, now I feel kind of weird. Anyway, when we offered Reverend Pam a role here at our church, she without any sort of prompting, she asked if she could take some of the money out of her salary and apply it to a program that we would use to try to start a second service. And we didn't even know you then. And anyway, that really made me feel a lot of trust for Reverend Pam. And I also have a lot of trust for Mike.
That's good.
And I for you.
I trust friendship and love.
I have one thought that I'd like to add. Trust has to have limits, for you can't even trust yourself. For even our memories fail us. As being married, my wife has often corrected me on things that I thought I knew, but I was wrong on. So even the most trusted things have to have limits, and you have to be aware of that so you don't trust too much.
I trust that I can walk around Palatine, walk around Deer Grove, go biking on the roads, and nobody's going to try have it out for me. Nobody's going to be shooting at me. Nobody's going to try to run me over. And that sounds pretty mundane, but not everybody can say that where they live.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go. I trust those who are vocally self-critical and don't blame others for their gaps.
I've been thinking about why there are so few people standing up to Congress and to President. And I think it's because, well, many of them are concerned about their self-interest. But that may also not be it fully. Anyone who defies the president knows that they will be destroyed, or there will be strong attempts to destroy them. So what we have to trust as individuals is the fact that when we stand up, we might be destroyed. So we have to be willing to almost be laid bare in the worst circumstance, that anybody who hates us to the degree that he seems to, liberal progressives, is fair target to have personal skeletons in the closet be revealed, to have money stolen out of your accounts. There's no skullduggery to which he will not go. And therefore, we have to be willing to look deep down within ourselves and say, how much is my honor worth? How much is it worth to my family in the future if I cave and just roll over and be silent? How much is it worth to the future if I'm willing to lay myself bare if I need to and keep my honor?
Thank you, Pat. Anybody else have something they ground themselves, feel trust?
I trust in the loving God. God that doesn't necessarily protect me from anything, but accompanies me in everything in my life.
Thank you. Oh, there's one more.
We talked about trust here, and it always started with, close family, wives, friends. I trust my wife, some days. But I think it expands out, and I brought it out to the church, and I think circles of trust, move out, and we have to remember that. And I think, the question is we might be disorganized enough as a country to be able to be scattered around that we might have the power and resources to resist what we're looking at for trust at this point in time. I think some of the town halls that we've seen witnessed, from some of the Republicans that they're afraid to have now, tell us that there are people out in the world that are very active in trying to do this. I too, grew up in that, from the 50s forward, and there was fear, there was terrible times, there was Vietnam, there were lots of things that were scary, but I never once really trusted that we would be going down a cliff like the one it feels like we're on right now. And I am going to put some faith in humanity that we know how to gum up the works, and we're going to do it. And I think that will be the next question is, are we strong enough to do all of that? And I hope that's where we're at. Thank you.
Thank you.
I trust the Green Sanctuary Committee and all of those small circles that have stood against what capitalism has done to our home, the earth. And I applaud the ongoing effort among those groups to hold the line.
Thank you. Thank you. Is that one more over there, Mike? And then they'll wrap it up. At the end of the row, straight back.
I'm not so much worried about who and what I trust. What I am concerned about is finding ways to relearn and to help others relearn how to trust each other, those of us that on the surface are on that supposedly opposite side. I believe I don't want to preach to the choir. I need to find a way to have those who think that I don't agree with them or that I am the liberal evil, that I am trustworthy, and for me to relearn to trust that many of those people that on the surface seem to be so far away from my way of thinking actually are many of them are, not all of them, that are decent people that really don't understand what they have unleashed, and that if we can connect, then we can stand together, because that's what's going to need to happen. To stand up to a bully, you have to be united.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody who spoke. Thank you. I knew if I let you talk, you'd create a much better sermon than I would in some ways. Because I do trust community. I do trust that our hearts are longing for a time to be together, that our hearts do want the same things down at the bottom if there's not somebody up there pulling the strings and trying to make us be against one another. I trust in the natural processes of life and the ongoing flow of the universe. I trust that every day is going to change at least a little bit, and then I'm going to change a little bit with it. I trust in the power of love. Not to fix everything, because things will continue going wrong, but to offer guidance and support and care, all of those things that humans need to keep going in the world. And I also trust in a creating and sustaining power that transforms and builds up and then destroys and cycles down and repeats over and over again. And we're going to find ourselves in those cycles, and what we have to do is just find our center in the middle of that, no matter what's going on around us. Because nothing stays the same. I trust that. I trust that I have the tools that I need to make good decisions most of the time, and that I have a community around me that can help me the rest of the time. But what does trust get us in the long run? Faith sometimes can work out. I kind of badmouth faith in the beginning, but faith is a belief in something without supporting evidence. But faith can sometimes help us get through when there's no evidence to suggest we're going to make it. So we do need faith as well as trust. Because once trust starts eroding, it's not especially helpful. When leaders prove unfaithful, when neighbors and friends show that they were going to act from fear rather than reason, and when facts point to a decline that we don't want to exist within, what can we do then? We can remain trustworthy ourselves. When things fall apart, when we need solidity, we can ground ourselves in a trustworthy reality. It always exists. And the people who make it through are the ones who find that grounding and hold on to it for themselves and then offer it to the people around them. You know that person. You all know that person. The person who's calm in the middle of an emergency. The person who remembers to call 911 or grab the blanket. The person who stands in the middle of the mess and doesn't run away. We've known those people in our lives, and we can strive to be those people for the world around us when we're able. But it really starts with doing that hard work of asking, what is my solid ground? And how can I ground myself in that? How do we hold our attention on that thing, like the pond that the duck is sleeping upon? How can we stay grounded that no matter what the world is doing, we remain connected and know our own deepest truths? Last week we talked about spiritual practices and how they can help us remember who we are. We can remember that we are children of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. We both have a right to be here and the privilege of living in this world of mystery and wonder and compassion and joy. This institution is solid ground for many people. It reminds us of our deepest longings, our highest aspirations, and at its best, it gives us the tools that we need to be the best versions of ourselves. This church was built on love, and the work it does makes love visible in the world. It does this through the way we support one another and our neighbors, like the Chalice House out front. Those folks are currently under duress because the very government that welcomed them in is now saying they might be kicked back out. What are we going to do about that as a community? How can we be solid ground? This church does that by taking care of our land and water, by restoring prairie, by doing so many other things that we've done. It does it by signing postcards for mental health support, by showing up at pride parades. It does it through our upcoming Time and Talent auction, which raises a ton of money for other institutions, which are kind of making the world a kinder, gentler place. Those institutions, for those of you who might not be aware, are Faith in Place, which is an environmental institution, the Illinois Coalition for Detained Immigrants, which advocates for humane treatment of immigrants and provides legal and social support. They do a lot for our Chalice House. Partners for Our Communities, which is dedicated to empowering underserved families, strengthening bonds, offering things like food pantry and ESL classes. And you can be a part of all of that work simply by offering something for the auction or showing up and bidding on a whole bunch of stuff. This church, through all the things that we do and all the things that we are, reminds us that love is both our legacy and our responsibility. That love is the force which moves the world, and that love is stronger than fear. Love is stronger than fear, but we have to add our love to that love in the world in order to support it and make it real, make it visible. I didn't set out writing a stewardship sermon today. I already gave you one of those, but this one kind of got there anyway. Institutions firmly hold our values. When life is chaotic, institutions like the courts, which are struggling but trying to hold on, like Congress, which isn't doing so well, like local governments filled with our neighbors, and civic organizations and nonprofits trying to make life a little better for other people. And so in chaotic times like these, we have to ground ourselves in our values, thinking them all the way through and making conscious decisions about how we're going to respond when those values are challenged. I think this is the hardest thing, isn't it? It's very easy to exist in our world just like floating along on the surface. The hard part is going, no, I'm going to wrestle with this, so when something comes up, I'm ready. And I think that's what this church does best of all. It helps us wrestle in so many areas, in so many ways, with who we really want to be and what we're willing to do to stand up for those values. Because trust, while it can be broken, can also be built back up again. With intention and patience and hard work, trust can exist in the world again. And we can contribute to building that trust by the way we show up, by the way we are trustworthy in every moment. And as we, as a local community and in the wider world, navigate the choppy waters of democracy, I invite you to take refuge in this trustworthy home, and then also use it as a grounding space to go out and do what you are called to do in the world. Together, we create solid ground for one another and for the wider world. Amen, and blessed be.
Somehow good will be
Lovely. The chalice extinguishing is by Elizabeth Sell Jones. Please join me in saying our closing words together. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of its truth, the warmth of this community, nor the fire of our commitment. These we carry in our hearts and share with all the world. Please rise in body or spirit and sing our closing hymn, number 344, A Promise Through the Ages Rising. Rings.
Before I do our final benediction, I just want to remind people that might not have heard the announcement. There's going to be a community art project going on at the end of Atherton Hall. If you want to partake in that with the kids, please join Reverend Karen and the folks. And I did want to say thank you as we are saying thank you for Rick for this magnificent lighthouse. Also, thank you to Emily who created our chart that's in the Atherton Hall that's keeping track of how much money is coming in. So thanks, Emily. We have a lot of creative people and generous people here. Our final reading is from Jeff Foster. There were times when I thought I'd never make it, times when my dreams had been shattered so thoroughly I couldn't imagine how life could ever go on. Yet it went on. And so I have come to trust life completely. Trust even the times when I forget how to trust at all. Trust that life doesn't always go according to plan, because there is no plan. Somehow, I am always held in a way I cannot explain and do not want to. I may be crushed yet again before too long. I may experience further seemingly insurmountable challenges and heartbreaks, but somehow I am always held. End quote. Know that you, too, are always held, always matter, always belong. In that you can trust.